Dead meme.
Hello and welcome to Plan B Terraforming. So basically I just want to do a little preview of the game just to show you what it's about. I haven't finished it by any means, in quotations, but I've gotten far enough that I've begun to terraform the planet. We've gotten like some water going on and the ice caps I guess are melting. But let's jump right in. I would describe this game as if there was a game between Mindustry and Factorio in complexity, but without any enemies. So there's no external threat. The only real resource sink, as opposed to shooting aliens in Factorio and Mindustry, is feeding cities. So let's open up right to the beginning. Let's talk about the presentation. So, as you can see, it's not the fidelity isn't super high, but it's not. I don't consider it ugly. Like, I kind of enjoy this style of art and graphics. And the polygons are rather low, but for the most part, the information you need to get from the game, from what you're seeing, is you can tell, like, this storage facility is filling up with this material, and that material is concrete, and this factory has got all of it's totally loaded up with aluminum and concrete and its output, or steel, and so you're getting enough information, right? As you can see here, the miners here are producing the material, and it's being fed into these systems, which is slowly being delivered. So it's not overly pretty, but at the same time, it's serviceable. It's more than enough, right? So if you're looking for a graphics intense game, you should just turn around. Another great example of the low poly count is this, right? Like, this is not overly attractive. These drills are very blocky. So we should mention, it's an early access game. A lot of this might change. It's hard to really say because, well, I'm not on the development team. And as you can see, the water has begun to hit the surface here because I've warmed up the planet. So that's part of the game mechanics, but that's a little bit later. So hopefully you like the melody in the background, because you're going to hear it a lot. It seems like there's 2 or 3 major melodies that kind of loop. And they're not bad by any means. It's just maybe you might want to mute them and put on your own music if you don't really care for it. Right? So just something to keep in mind. And a little bit more look at the graphics. This is one of the cities that's being fed. This is the resource sink of the game. You're feeding cities materials in order to grow them, right? They start off as like one little block, and they slowly expand, right? They get pretty large. So I believe we've covered presentation. Not overly pretty, but it's serviceable. You're getting enough information in order to understand what's going on, right? So let's talk about the gameplay. So what are you doing for the most part? Here's a good example. So I am mining up these materials. These miners are basically producing the basic resource, and then it's being shipped from these pads to these factories. And these factories are producing the first level of goods. So those goods, or the baseline level of goods, are turned into an intermediate product. And commonly, I'm shipping that concrete down here to make reinforced concrete, which is being consumed by the cities. That's like the resource sink that we're seeing. Here's another good example. These mine gases from the air, and I am collecting them and then producing other goods, right? These red things are being delivered to a city. So they're being consumed, right? So that is what's the general gameplay loop. As you advance your various objectives. Here's a good example here. These are the objectives. As you complete them, we go back to level 1. My first one was really simple, and level 2 a little bit harder, and so on, but it gives you new items that you could use to make your setup more efficient. And that eventually you unlock roads. So I have trucks delivering goods, and eventually unlock trains, and the trains are delivering goods. And you can imagine that trains are a little bit more effective. So let's talk about the complexity level. This game's complexity is not anywhere near, say, your Factorio, but it's more complicated than, say, your Ministry, but not by much. But they're close enough in genre that I feel that if you were to smash them together, that's the game you would get. So as you can see, these trains are kind of pushing and looping over each other. There's no traffic system that's something akin to a city skylines, like there's no traffic jams. And if I could find a good example, yeah, see, here you go. The trucks can drive through each other. So if you're looking for a game with complicated systems that may require you to manage your vehicles' locations and even vehicle upkeep, like there's no money, there's no electricity, and this stuff might change, but there's no upkeep costs for everything, so its complexity is lower than that of your average game that you may see in the genre. So that's the idea. The goal, take your initial byproducts, or your initial mined up byproducts, turn them into a intermediate good. You feed those to factories. Some factories will require you to combine several intermediate goods to a higher one, which your cities will demand. And the major goal, the vast majority of the objectives, are to feed these cities. And you'll build supply depots in them, and so the goal is to meet these requirements. So this city is not doing so hot. I need to definitely get more oxygen here, and I need more reinforced concrete here. And here's another byproduct. The city, after a while, will produce waste, and you have to deal with that, right? That's it sounds complicated, but it doesn't take too much. So let's go look at how the factories are set up. Here is an example. My train's going to drop in here. It's going to unload, or these drones from these pads will unload all of the material and drop them on various trains or whatever comes by. So whatever the stop is requesting. So this stop is collecting metal waste. The metal waste is being placed on these pads, and it's being recycled into metals. And these train stations are loading up trains that stop by. So basically, this production train takes in waste product from the cities and turns it into valuable materials. So in order to do this, let's drop down a factory. So you'll just drop a factory in the world, and the various recipes that are unlocked for you will be available to be seen. There are more than one kind of factory. Some factories will require you to make, in order to actually have additional factories, your manufacturer will build your factories for you. I know that sounds a little bit weird, but as you can see, recycling centers, ice extractors, and things like that are actually built in this factory. And it'll have its demands. High-tech parts and concrete. I'm sure you can figure it out. The UI, for the most part, is not too bad. The only real thing I would change is some of the information, like how you get it, doesn't feel as intuitive. Like, you get accustomed to it, and it becomes fine. Like, as you can see, like, this train station has 8 trains on it. I have 66 trains available. It's transporting steel. But that's all the information I get. I would like to see some more information overlays to get an idea of what is happening across the entire factory. That would be really cool. So again, this is an early access game that might be coming. So for the most part, the UI makes sense. Your basic factory is more advanced. Your transportation, your terraforming structures, trees you can plant, and some special buildings. Like it's not overly complicated, right? Most of it, like I think you can understand if you've played any sort of factory builder game, especially if you've played Mindustry. The way the controls feel a lot like Mindustry. So I think the verdict of this game, is it fun? Yeah, I'm enjoying it. If you like Mindustry, Factorio, management games, without any enemies, at least in this case, you'll probably like this one. Like, it's definitely fun. I'm sinking some time into it. There is some future planning, which we learned here that since I've been terraforming, I no longer have access to these minerals. And that's a learning experience, right? So that's your future planning. I should have mined all of this up and shipped it away before I got to the point where the planet started warming up. But no biggie. So if you don't mind the polygon count, you may want to consider running your own music in the background, because it does get a bit repetitive. If you don't mind having the challenge of enemies for resource sink, you have these cities to build, and you could build as you can upgrade all 3 or just 1 or 2, but eventually the objectives may require you to do all 3 of them. Something to keep in mind. The gameplay is somewhat rudimentary, but at the same time it is somewhat complicated. The controls are alright. You'll get used to them pretty quick, I think. If you've played anything such as Ministry, as I mentioned before, you should pretty much be able to pick it up. I don't see too much of an issue. And for the price, it'll probably be in the neighborhood of $9 for you, because well, the Canadian dollar, it's not doing so well these days. Well, it doesn't seem to ever do super well. It was $11 for me. I imagine most people will be paying roughly 10. So hopefully this little preview gives you an idea of whether or not you want to spend the money on it. For a $9 to $11 game, depending on your region, the amount of fun I've gotten out of it, I think it's worth it. But hopefully that helps you out. And thanks for showing up, and we'll see you all again real soon.